All right, cheers and salutations. Welcome to Americans Learn. My name is Kit. Please be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and hit that ring bell notification. That way all you lovely, beautiful people are made aware when we upload new content upon our YouTube channel. And today, we got ourselves a fun video titled 200 versus 500, America's Defiant Stand at Lanzerath Ridge. So, folks, let me be very clear here, okay? I am a huge fan of a last stand battle. Those that are victorious and those in which it's a horrible defeat. And 22 versus 500, I like those odds. Something tells me that we're going to enjoy this. This is a video from the Fat Electrician, so please, with a cherry on top, you hip cool cats, support the original content creator. It's the right thing to do. It's the one thing to do, and I expect all you beautiful, lovely people to do it. So without further ado, since I'm in charge of the ones and twos, let's get ready to enjoy this video in a 3, a 2, and an uno and out. Let's go ahead and check this out and find out what is ongoing. So let's find out what is happening here.
All right, the most decorated platoon of World War II. Today we're talking about the Battle of Lanzerath Ridge, when 22 American soldiers stood their ground against 500 German paratroopers and quite possibly changed the entire outcome of the Second World War, and they didn't even know it. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Hey, it's the old school couch.
What is happening right now?
Delete me.
We're not going to use the new couch?
No, the small one's iconic, plus the big one hurts.
Yes.
Well done.
Anyway, where do you want this thing?
Coffee table.
There you
Will
go.
the audience be able to see it?
Yes.
Yeah, I got a thing for that. Look at this.
The bat signal.
Really? A spotlight for the IRS?
I didn't think about that part.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. Because the IRS, they're not good, not great, very, very bad. Bad news bears in my book. Okay. Old Kit Kat says IRS be bad, and don't ask me if I'm going to sweep for the IRS. Okay, because you know what? I want those floors to be dirty. I want them to be terrible. That's how I want it to be. Okay, that's the order for the day.
You're extra.
Love you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, Delete Me. Super straightforward business. You give them money, they turn around and they make sure the data brokers aren't selling your personal information on the internet. So here's how this happens. Pretty much anytime you use a free app or internet service, that app or service isn't actually free. What they're doing is they're harvesting your personal information, then they turn around, they sell it to data brokers, and then the data brokers sell it to anybody that has money. The good news is these data brokers are legally required to stop selling your personal information if you formally ask them to. The problem is there's a bunch of different data brokers and they all have a different process for you to formally request that they quit selling your information. That's where Delete Me comes in. Delete Me monitors all the biggest data brokers for your personal information, and as soon as it comes up for sale, they automatically write in and have them take it down as soon as possible. And then as long as you're subscribed to Delete Me, they will continue to monitor, checking and rechecking for your personal information at these data brokers over and over and over again to make sure if they do ever come in contact with your data again, they have to delete it again. So if that's something you'd be interested in, I will have a link and a discount code down below. Let's get back to the video.
All right, real quick. You all heard this story. I used Delete Me, used the Fat Electrician's code. I did it out of laughs and giggles, and then I stopped laughing on how scary the internet could be because old Kit Kat found his name out there a lot. And I'm not that special, okay? So, you know, I've used Delete Me. No, not a sponsor, none of that stuff, but I've used it, and it works, and yeah, I feel a little bit safer. So protect yourselves at all times, okay? And keep your heads on a swivel and drink the water. There, okay? Protect yourselves. Do that.
All right, important background info. September 1944. Things are not going well for Germany in World War II at this point. On the east, they have the Soviet Union Red Army closing in, and on the west, they have the Allied forces closing in as well. At this point, the Allied forces have already stormed the beach at Normandy. They've retaken North Africa. They've retaken France and Belgium, and now Allied forces are right up on the German border at the Siegfried Line.
To avenge Rome. Germania will answer for its crimes. Oh, sorry. I've been checking out some history videos on the Roman Empire. Germania will answer for its crimes, and then have the audacity to call themselves the Holy Roman Empire. How dare you stand where he once stood?
It is Germany's last line of defense, their western wall, almost 400 miles of dragon's teeth, tank traps, mines, barbed wire, and it's all covered by over 18,000 concrete reinforced bunkers with artillery and machine guns. And it is the advice of almost every high-ranking German officer that Hitler should order his men to hunker down and defend throughout the winter. But Hitler has a different idea. Hitler wants to do the exact opposite. He wants to go home with the girl that he took to prom, so to speak. Hitler got here by being overtly aggressive. He attacked Poland, and then he launched the Blitz to take over France. He attacked quickly and violently to a degree that nobody had ever seen before, taking everybody off guard. They literally called his tactics the Blitzkrieg, the Lightning War, and he wants to do that again. Rather than
Well, it's not going to happen this time, honey child. There's a thing called this combined might of the Allied forces, with special guest star the Soviet Red Army too.
playing defense and waiting for the enemy to come to them, he wants to go to the enemy. He wants to launch a major offensive, and the German military only has one left in him. This is an all-or-nothing strategy, and if he fails, the war is essentially over, but that's not going to deter him. You see, along the Western Front, you have the British and the Canadians in the north, and you have the Americans in the south, and it is Hitler's strategy to launch another Blitzkrieg-style attack right down the middle, splitting the British and the Canadians from the Americans, separating the Allied forces. After splitting the Allied forces, he wants to drive the Canadians and the British to Antwerp, essentially pushing them up against the sea, creating another Dunkirk-type situation, forcing the British and Canadians to surrender, and then he hopes to broker a peace deal with America because America won't want to be the only Allied force left fighting them. Assuming that plan works, he will no longer have a Western Front to defend, and he will be able to divert his entire military to the Eastern Front to combat the Red Army. This is a Hail Mary. This is an all-or-nothing strategy, and the Germans need everything to go right if they want any chance of success. They need the weather to comply, and they need the element of surprise. Because of this, the entire offensive is going to need to run on a very tight timetable. Once they invade and knock the Allied forces on their heels, they're going to need to keep them on their heels the entire time until they've won.
Okay, so here's the thing about timetables and everything else working properly. Sometimes it just doesn't, all right? Sometimes things go to crappers, all right? And you never know when there's going to be that one person that's going to crap in your pot and everything gets ruined. Hey, Adolf, little bit of advice from the far future. This thing ain't going to hunt.
If even a single German unit gets hung up or delayed, it could throw off the timetable, allowing the Allied forces to regain a foothold and launch a successful defense and maybe even a counteroffensive. And that would essentially bring an end to World War II in the European theater, with the Nazis losing. The crazy part about a strategy that's this big and this time sensitive is that it could be just one small contingency of men led by one officer that's willing to fight to the bitter end that could set about a chain reaction that would bring about the end of the entire Third Reich. And what's even crazier is Hitler would probably never even find out that dude's name.
I can just see it now. Adolf is in his bunker being like, this plan is perfect. No one will stop me. I will rule the world and be the new Germanic emperor. And then all of a sudden, boom, we get to the screen chat. This guy's like, are you sure about that?
Lyle Bauk was born on December 17th, 1923 in Fenton, Missouri. He grew up during the Great Depression with 5 siblings. His father was a carpenter, and as I'm sure you can imagine, there wasn't a whole lot of new construction going on during the Great Depression, so he grew up in what many of us would consider to be soul-crushing poverty. Luckily, ignorance is bliss, and young Lyle was just a kid. Whatever he experienced was normal to him. He had no idea that it was irregular for a family that large to live in a one-bedroom home with no electricity and no plumbing. He didn't know that it wasn't normal that nobody was full after dinner and that all the siblings would go out to eat dandelions and wild berries for dessert. But as he got older, he started to fully understand his family's situation, and by the time he was 14, he wanted to help. So he went and he enlisted in the Missouri National Guard, where he would be able to make $1 a day every time he had drill. In the Army, Lyle's basically a prodigy. He's incredibly intelligent, he's great at everything he does, and he grew up some poor depression kid eating dandelions in his backyard, right? There's nothing the Army can do to him that his childhood hasn't already done, and he deemed his childhood
I could see the drill instructors Army drill sergeants, Marine Corps drill instructors. And whatever you do, if you ever enlist in the Marine Corps, do not call your drill instructor drill sergeant, okay? I saw it happen to somebody who made a calculative error. All right? It was a no bueno for them. Simple as that. But probably the drill sergeants were like, hey man, we've thrown everything at this guy. I mean, he's all right. What can we do to him that life hasn't done already?
As a good time. So all of this is just fun to him, no matter how much it would suck to anybody else. By the time he's 16 years old, he is the supply sergeant for his entire unit. And in December of 1940, as World War II is starting to heat up, America has not entered the war yet, but it's looking like we're gonna. They're starting to draft people. His entire reserve unit gets activated to go do a bunch of training. So Balk and his unit are down in Texas and Louisiana. They're training for a full year. They go from December 1940 till December of 1941. Early December rolls around. They're getting ready. They're packing their shit. They're going to go back home. They've been gone for an entire year. Japanese attack Pearl Harbor. They're not going home. They get told, congratulations, your active duty has been extended indefinitely.
Hey, kids, what's going on? War! We're going to war!
No.
Now, Starship Troopers, that's one hell of a great movie. If you ever check out the behind the scenes, like that movie was thumbed down by critics. But if you look at like what the director was trying to do, the behind the scenes movie, because there's a difference between the book and the movie. And both are great. But I have more respect for the film Starship Troopers now as I get older. It is they will never make a movie like that ever again. Because Hollywood is out of ideas. And Hollywood's a cesspool. But I don't want to go on a tangent there. We're here to learn about the 22 versus 500. So there we go.
Don't worry, though, it gets better. You see, the Army, in its infinite wisdom, is like, okay, we've got this group of National Guard guys. They've been training for a full year. They're ready to go. They've been training in Texas and Louisiana. They're used to the heat. They're acclimated for the desert and the jungle with extreme humidity. Okay, where should we put them? And the Army's like, the Aleutian Islands, aka fucking Alaska, which is just brilliant. Okay, so Balk's unit is going to get sent up to the Aleutian Islands because they're concerned that the Japanese are now going to attack the West Coast, and one of the first places they would attack would be the Aleutian Islands. So they're basically...
Oh, man. And I bet it's cold up there. Shout out to anybody that lives in Alaska. Do we have any viewing audience members in the great state of Alaska? Hi, everybody. How you doing? Or former residents who lived in the great state of Alaska. How cold does it get up there?
Basically going to be there ready to fight the Japanese if they come. So at this point, Balk is like, I would rather do literally anything else. So he goes and he volunteers for OCS school, and he volunteers for this new sketchy job called being a paratrooper. And OCS school gets back to him first, which is the officer training course. He gets shipped off to school to become an officer. So Balk ships off for Fort Benning. He's going to end up being an infantry officer. He goes through the course, graduates top of his class. He does so well, they end up retaining him and not shipping him off to war because they're going to use him as an instructor to train a bunch of more recruits that are coming through. So he actually ends up doing that for a year at Fort Benning, training small group defensive tactics for the infantry. So a year goes by, Balk is 19 years old. He gets orders to go down to Camp Maxey, Texas. He's going to be joining the 99th Infantry Division before they get ready to ship off to combat. He's not really sure where they're shipping off to yet. Nobody knows if they're going to the Pacific Theater or the European Theater, but just judging on the fact that they're in Texas where it's warm and the European Theater is about to go into winter, it would make sense that he was going to the Pacific Theater. So he's starting to mentally get himself ready for that. So he gets down to Camp Maxey, and at this point in the war, it's like 1943. So most of the younger officers, Balk's only 19 years old. He's a first lieutenant, and most of the junior officers that are young are all what's called a 90-day wonder, which basically means they pluck some kid out of college, sent him to officer training school for 90 days, and turn him around and sent him into combat to lead men into battle. So being called a 90-day wonder is like a derogatory term. It's definitely not a compliment. It's based...
Man, they shouldn't do that to our boy. What the hell? Don't do that to Lyle. What's wrong? He's already been in already.
Basically everybody in your chain of command being like, hey, I respect the rank you have on your chest, but also I have zero faith in your ability to do absolutely anything. So that's kind of what everybody just assumes Balk is. He's so young, they look at him, 19-year-old kid, first lieutenant on his chest, are like, 90-day wonder. In reality, Balk has 5 solid years of experience already at 19 years old. He is one of, if not the most experienced junior officer in the United States Army at this point. His chain of command realizes this, and they give him a more important task. He ends up getting tasked with standing up and creating the INR platoon, the Infantry and Reconnaissance Platoon, for the 394th Infantry Regiment of the 99th Infantry Division. Now, an INR platoon at this point is what we today would call a Scout Sniper Platoon in the
Hell yeah, there we go. So these are the predecessors for the Scout Snipers. Show some respect, all right? If you ever enlist in, you see some Scout Snipers, well, chances are they'll see you before you see them. Just give them the respect that's due, because you never know when you might need that cover fire, and that well-placed shot might save you from an oncoming enemy that you may not see. It'll be your little guardian angel.
infantry. Basically, they take some of the better or the best infantry guys available from the entire regiment, stick them inside of this platoon, and they learn different tactics because they have a completely different job from the rest of the infantry. Their job's going to be going out behind enemy lines, surveilling the enemy, gathering intelligence, potentially capturing other enemy scouts, things of that nature. Bauk is basically told, hey, here's access to all the personnel files for the entire 99th Infantry Division. Pick your top 18 guys. You got to have 2 squads of 9. So he immediately goes through all the personnel records, starts picking guys out. His criteria is you have to be either a high school graduate or currently going to college. You have to have an IQ of 110 or higher. You have to be a qualified expert marksman with the M1 Grand, and you have to be physically fit. So he gets like a list of like 50 names, goes around talking to everybody, gets a bunch of volunteers. He ends up having 21 volunteers, but he only needs 18 men. So he has this little miniature selection process. 3 of the men fall out. He's got his crew of 18. And
Oh man. See, here's the thing. Back in that day, falling out or failing for a task. I mean, that was a pretty big deal, because if you ever watch like Band of Brothers, when the first episode where like the soldiers, the older gentlemen who will be portrayed in the series, they talk about, I forget which one of them said it, but in his neighborhood, I think 1 or 2 guys were not physically fit or able to enlist, and they self-deleted themselves because they couldn't partake in it. So, like, that must have been some harsh training, because you can't be part of your team. You're part of this elite group. You're with your brothers. You don't want to let them down. It's just one of those things that you don't want to partake in. So, wow, damn. I feel sorry for those 3 guys who just, they just couldn't make it all the way. But all right, this just tells how tough Lyle is.
from here, Bauk uses the rest of the time he has stateside to train the holy hell out of these.
Correction. First Lieutenant Bauk. I apologize.
These 18 guys. Remember, he was an infantry instructor at Fort Benning for a year. This guy knows how to train people, and now he is overly committed to 18 people specifically. He makes them do the hardest obstacle course at Camp Maxey every single morning. By the time they get done with training and get shipped off to war, this group of 18 is an excellent team, and they are in phenomenal shape. And then one day they just get told, hey, pack your shit, head to the train yard, you're shipping off to war. They don't even tell these guys where they're going. Now at this point, you gotta remember, it's like late 1944. The Allied forces are dominating over in Europe. The German army's on its last leg. They've got the Germans pretty much pushed all the way back into Germany, and they're just manning the Siegfried Line. Okay, so everybody's kind of hoping they're going to Europe, but also everybody kind of already knows they're going to the Pacific Theater. They've had these guys out training in the desert the entire time. It's just obvious they're going to send them over to that tropical environment, and they're going to have to go toe-to-toe with the Japanese, which is horrifying. So they all get to the train yard. Nobody tells them shit. They still don't know where they're going. Everybody's just kind of like, we're going to Japan. We've got to be going to Japan, right?
No, you're going to Germania. You're going to Germania.
Right? They get in the train. Nobody tells them where they're going. And they're like, well, fuck it. I guess we'll know in a second when the train starts moving east or west. Because obviously, if we're going to the west, we're going to the Pacific Theater. If we're going to the east, we're going over to Europe. And sure enough, the train starts heading to the East Coast. These boys are headed over to the European theater in winter, despite the fact that they're acclimated to living in a desert, which, I mean, it makes sense if you don't think about it.
Sometimes those big brain people in the Pentagon, the higher brass, they know things, right? They know things, and then they screw it up.
So the 99th Infantry Division gets over to Europe. They end up manning the Siegfried Line. The entire Siegfried Line on the Allied side is pretty sparsely defended. They're not anticipating the Germans are going to launch a counteroffensive and attack, so they're just kind of spread out, maintaining the area. They're going to let winter do some of the work for them because it's November in 1944. Let the Germans go in there, freeze their ass off. The Red Army's attacking them from the other front. Like, let's just wait a minute and chill is more or less a strategy. So a lot of the infantry guys on that front aren't doing a whole lot other than just securing that front line. But Bauk and the INR platoon are scouts. They're going to be going ahead and they're going to be actually scouting out the Siegfried Line. They're going to be making maps, getting spots of where all the bunkers are, where all the booby traps are, all the minefields, gathering all the intel, and trying to capture German scouts and intelligence along the way. Now, because the INR platoon is going to be sneaking up on the enemy front lines trying to gather reconnaissance, their job is a little bit more dangerous, so Bauk wants to give him and his men the best firepower they can possibly get, so he goes out to the mechanics and the engineers and asks them to make some modifications to the INR platoon's M1 carbines.
Need more power, need more fire. Gotta have more. Hold on. For my orc fans out there, that needs more DACA. Definitely needs more DACA.
Firepower.
If you don't know, the M1 carbine is semi-automatic and it has a 15-round magazine, so they go and they end up welding 2 magazines together to make a bunch of 30-round magazines, and then they modify the sears inside of the carbines to make them fully automatic. So now the INR platoon is going to be running around the woods in Germany with what amounts to a bunch of submachine guns. By December 1944, they're going out, they're doing missions, and one of the first missions, they wanted to take Private Leopold with them. Now, Private Leopold in the INR platoon is unique because he was actually from Germany. His family fled when the Nazis came to power because they were Jewish. So Private Leopold is extremely valuable because not only does he speak German, but he speaks German in a German accent. It's his native tongue. So he's going to be able to overhear Germans if they get close enough to spy on them, or if they capture one, he's going to be able to interrogate them. It's a very valuable asset to have. The problem is he's Jewish and he's from Germany. If he gets captured by the Nazis, it's pretty much a death sentence right out of the gate. And he's already being a scout, like the most forward infantry unit available, so his chances of being caught are higher than virtually anybody else's. So he's not super keen on going out on missions unless he's feeling like he's at 100%. And on this particular day, he's sick and he's got a really bad cough. So Leopold goes to the chain of command and he's like, hey, I've got this really bad cough. I'm a scout. We're trying to like sneak up on the enemy. Maybe me coughing the entire time isn't going to work out that great. Also, I'd rather not get caught because I'm Jewish.
Yeah, I mean, come on, dude. He's got a lot of things working against him. First of all, that's incredible that his family escaped Germania before, you know, the Third Reich really started to make things go ham. All right, I think that's a polite way of saying it. Second of all, being in recon, hey, that's an awesome plus. But if he gets caught, he's got a cough. That's going to ruin everything. Could get his friends killed. That's an He's public enemy number 1 because he's Jewish, because the Third Reich, has a lot of horrible policies, terrible policies, domestic policies that are definitely big uh-ohs. Yeah, sure, go ahead and patrol. Go ahead and patrol. Like, no, tic-tac-toe, 3 in a row. That's a horrible thing to do. Why would you? Well, anyways, it's the upper echelon leadership. Hey, folks. This isn't the first time big brain people make stupid mistakes, nor will it be the last. But feel sorry for that private. Just whatever you do, tell yourself not to cough.
What do you think? Can I sit this mission out? And the chain of command's like, I mean, you speak German, right? You'll cough in a German accent. It'll be fine.
Uh-oh.
Cough in German. How do you pronounce coughing in German? Because we've all seen the meme where like a word is pronounced similar, like in different countries, and then in German it's like 3 paragraphs. If we got anyone who speaks fluent German, translate cough from English to Germanic. Type in the comment section below.
You okay there, Dennis?
So Leopold's like, fuck, okay, I guess. So he goes out on this mission, immediately starts coughing the entire time. Bauk is like, Leopold, shut the fuck up. Start eating snow. So Leopold spends the entire mission just eating snow to calm his throat down so he's not coughing.
Take a salt tablet, drink water, or eat snow. There you go.
Ends up working great. This is like their first mission out together, and they come across a dead German soldier's body. At first, they're worried that it's a booby trap, so they sit there, they watch it for a while. There's no movement anywhere around it, so it's probably not an ambush, and then they sneak up on it, and they tie a rope around the ankle of the body, and then get as far away as they can before pulling it like 6 to 8 feet, just to make sure it's not booby trapped with like a grenade underneath it or something. And it's not, so they go, they search the body, they find an ID card, they find out what unit this guy's from, and they find some other intel on him. This is the first successful mission of the INR platoon. A couple days after that, they...
All right, good. Hey, you found a dead body. Mission accomplished. If that was like a scenario in a game, there'd be like, achievement granted, found dead body. All right, guys, we're going on patrol. Hey, we found a dead body. We did it, Patrick. We completed the mission.
They go out on another patrol. They end up running into a German patrol, and then they immediately outgun them using their modified M1 carbines.
Perfect.
And they end up wiping out the entire German patrol. So things are going great. The INR platoon is performing exactly how they trained to perform. They're going out, they're scouting, they're doing their job, they're getting it done. And what does the military do when things aren't broken? That's right, we fix them anyways. You know what would be cool if the INR platoon, the intelligence and reconnaissance platoon, rather than going out and gathering intelligence and performing reconnaissance, what if we set them up in static fighting positions and ordered them to hold a point like every other infantry company on the planet?
It's a great idea, right?
It's terrible idea.
Yeah.
So
good.
December 10th, Bauk's
It's brilliant. 10 out of 10. Life-changing decision.
commanding officer rolls up and is like, hey, get in the Jeep. He drives Bauk out, and he drives him to this little tiny village of like 15 houses and a cafe called Lanzerath. And Lanzerath has this main road running right through the top of it. Inside of Lanzerath, there's like 50 anti-tank soldiers and then like 4 forward observers, you know, the guys that call in the artillery. And then right on the other side of the town, there's this ridge with a wood line. And the commander's like, hey, I want you and your 18 guys to go ahead and hold this ridge on this wood line. We can't lose this town on the off chance that the Germans do attack, because this would be the best route for a bunch of tanks to come storming through. So Bauk and the INR platoon are not excited about this. This is not what they trained to do. It's not really their job. They don't have the training. And when you don't have the training, you get to do the most terrifying thing in the military. You get to wing it, and Bauk is going to do just that.
And that's how it's done all the time, every time. Sorry to disappoint you, people of the free world. That's just how it's done. Winging it. We're going to get a man to the moon. We're going to wing it. Going to go to the bottom of the ocean, said the Titan crew. Oh, they winged it all right. All right, sorry. That was a terrible joke. You know, the more I learn about that implosion for that Titan sub, the more I'm convinced that, like, again, it really could have just been quick like that, which is fantastic, because my goodness, why would you build such a cheap submarine? Anyways, submersible to be more precise. Anyways, that's a story for another day. Never mind. Titan sub, R.I.P.
So obviously they're about to start stealing shit. Strategically transferring equipment to an alternate location.
The finest merchandise this time ever done, on sale today. Come on down.
Yes,
and the best way to go about that this time is to not actually steal it. It's actually to trade stuff that they've already stolen. Acquired. You see,
there you go. Yeah, they set up a little black market. Perfectly legal. Alphonse Capone had a lot of great markets, and he's one of Chicago's #1 citizens. And before anyone says, oh, he was a gangster, oh, he was a criminal, oh, he went to jail and served in Alcatraz. No. They arrested him for tax evasion because of the IRS. Whose side are you on? The IRS? Or an entrepreneurial citizen and legitimate businessman, Alphonse Capone, who was wrongly imprisoned and falsely accused of being part of this thing, this outfit, whatever it's called. You know, I have a friend, right? You know, and he made it very clear. Okay, his name was Phil Leotardo. He served a certain amount of time in the can. He never talked about it too much, all right? Never gave how many years he was. But he kept his mouth shut. Not a peep, okay? Not a peep. Not even Joey Peep gave a peep about how much time Phil Leotardo was in the can for. All right? So you make a decision. Legitimate businessman trying to set up free markets, Alphonse Capone, or the IRS. I better see everybody siding with a great citizen named Alphonse Capone. Chicago's #1 hero. I probably pissed off a lot of people.
See, because the INR platoon was one of the only units actually going out scouting and engaging German scouts, they were also some of the only men on the Western Front at this point in time that had gathered memorabilia, if you will. And let's face it, everybody wants a good souvenir, right? Including supply sergeants. So Bauk gathers up all their memorabilia, goes out to the supply sergeants. He ends up trading it. He ends up getting several Browning automatic rifles, a 30 caliber machine gun, and then he ends up trading some pretty substantial pieces of memorabilia and gets a Jeep that he then convinces the mechanics to weld tank plate armor onto and mount a 50 caliber machine gun on top of.
Good.
And he drives that out to Lanzerath. So the INR platoon gets all their new equipment. They head out to Lanzerath.
All this is legit in my book, okay? There's 3 ways to do things, all right? The right way, the wrong way, and a Chicago way. They chose the Chicago way.
There was a unit that was already there that had already dug foxholes, but their foxholes kind of sucked. They weren't very deep, so the INR platoon gets to work. They dig the foxholes way deeper. They go out in the woods and they cut down a bunch of 4 to 5 inch thick trees. They build it up on top and they cover the foxholes with wood as well. They camouflage the holy hell out of everything. They even dig a foxhole for the Jeep with a ramp to drive down into, so it has its own fortified fighting position.
Good.
So while that's going on, Bauk goes down into town in Lanzerath. He wants to figure out everything that's going on. He wants to talk with the FOs, talk with the anti-tank guys, just get everything under control and know what's going on, right? He gets there. kind of a giant shit show. They've clearly been here for a while and there's not a whole lot going on. There's a family in town called the Schur family, and they're actually making hot food for all the Americans in exchange for chocolate and cigarettes. Now, the Schur family has already got their 25-year-old daughter sleeping in bed with the parents just so she stays away from all the American soldiers.
Yeah, those horn dogs. No. She cannot go to those honorable men. She'll take advantage of them, break their hearts. Okay? They got to be focused on doing their training, reading the U.S. Constitution, and saving the world from the Germanic threat. All right? Those are young princes, soon to become young kings. They cannot have her take advantage of them.
And all the American soldiers have made her 16-year-old brother Adolf basically their mascot. He now speaks.
Oh, horrible first name. Hold on, I got a story for you. I went to dinner with one of my good friends. This was many years ago, 2018. Great dinner. Food was great. On our way back, we drive by a crematorium. It's called Adolph's Crematorium. I paused for a second and said, "What was the name of that place?" And they said, yeah, I know. We joke about it too. I'm like, whoa. Turns out it's been in Chicago for quite some time. Or not in Chicago, but it's in the, near the Oak Park area, I believe, Berwyn area. But it's called Adolph's Crematorium. I can imagine, like, when the soldiers got there. "Hey, what's your name, buddy?" "Oh, my name's Adolf." Like, "Oh, hey, what's up, buddy? You a good Adolf or a bad Adolf?"
Speaks English, but only profanity. So with that, he goes back up to camp in his fortified fighting position, and they just kind of wait. They're there just making sure that the Germans don't attack, essentially, freezing their ass off. They've got a little heating shack. They're taking turns, rotating in and out, warming up, sleeping, eating food, and this goes on for a couple of days. By December 13th, this new guy rolls into town, some Belgian guy acting kind of weird, so they, stop him. They talk to him. They're like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm bringing my cousin some shoes. And they're
Uh-huh. Shoes? What kind of shoes? Are they magic dancing shoes?
like, right, that's a fucking spy. And they're like debating on what to do with this guy. They can't really do shit with him, so they just end up letting him go. And from there, shit just gets weird. There's this like one corner of the area that they're overlooking with their fields of fire that they end up calling the creepy corner because every single night something weird is going on over there, right? There's noises and nobody can see shit and they don't know what's going on over there. And eventually one night they're manning the positions and they hear snow, like freshly frozen snow. You know how when you step on it, it kind of got this big crunch sound as it breaks through?
Yeah.
They hear that getting closer and closer and closer, and eventually they just open fire on it because it has to be someone or something coming right at it. And after they open fire, it's just quiet. And that was it for the rest of the night. They can hear some grumbling off in the distance, but nothing else ever came. The next morning, they go out and they investigate, and it was a dog that they had ended up shooting, but it was clearly a military-trained dog, but it was by itself.
Hey, look at us. Look at us. Huh? Who would have thought? Not me.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Turns out, there was that doggo was a Germanic doggo. So it makes it a bad doggo.
So that's weird. And then they adventure further past that, like 150, 200 yards. And then there's like ski tracks all over the place. And they're like, what the fuck is going on? So then the whole day goes by. Everything's seeming kind of normal. A Jeep shows up to resupply them with more food. And this time around, they all got a liquor ration, which is like immediately a red flag. Like they're only getting...
Hey, why are we getting booze? Good luck, guys. Bye.
Giving out liquor rations when they're about to ask us to do some dumb shit or something horrible is about to happen, okay? It's like getting a steak and lobster dinner. It's going to happen right before somebody's about to die. They're not telling us something and we need to figure out what it is. But then somebody's like, hold on, maybe it's not that bad. Lieutenant Bauk actually turns 21 in 2 days on the 17th. So maybe it's so we can all have a party and get LP drunk. Then more creepy noises all night long. That morning, a deer walks into camp. Naturally, they shoot it with a machine gun. They end up eating it. Then normal day, seems like, okay? Night of the 15th. More creepy noises all night long. But tonight the noises are different. Off in the distance, it almost sounds like there's engines running. So Lieutenant Bauk knows something's up. So he has all the guys up. They're all alert. They're all there. And then on the day of the 16th at 5:30 a.m., they start getting hit with a ton of artillery fire right on top of them. At this point, the whole platoon and Lieutenant Bauk are all shitting their pants. I mean, they've had a couple of firefights off in the woods with like 2 or 3 Germans, but this time it's completely different. It feels like they're in the shit. It feels like they're at D-Day taking a ton of artillery fire. The rounds that are getting shot towards them are set to airburst, so they're blowing up in the tree line before they hit the ground, and it's just sending shards of tree splinters everywhere. So the entire INR platoon is just hiding inside their foxholes, and at this point, everybody's pretty fucking happy that Lieutenant Bauk made everybody cut down trees and put roofs over their foxholes, because now it's going to take a direct hit to take anybody out. The artillery barrage just keeps coming and coming and more, and it gets to the point that like the adrenaline wears off, and it just gets tiresome. Like the men are in their foxholes hiding and they're like, okay, you guys are gonna attack us. We get it. Quit launching artillery and just come get us already.
Yeah, come on. Like, come on. If you're giving us a fireworks show, after a while, it kind of gets boring.
But the artillery just keeps coming. Like, it feels like it takes an entire day for this artillery to finally stop. Once the artillery fire finally stops, Lieutenant Bauk gets out of his foxhole to assess the situation. He looks down on Lanzerath and realizes all this artillery fire has only been hitting their wood line right on top of them, and the one corner of Lanzerath where those 4 forward observers were, which means Belgian shoe guy was definitely a spy that fucked him over.
Oh, man. See, now, it's one of those moments where you just got to take somebody back and just beat them within an inch of their life and be like, are you sure you're here to give your cousin shoes? I would have taken that risk. Yes, I would have been a bad guy. Beat him. It's like, oh, yeah, you're here to deliver shoes? Beat him. Watch, 2 days later. Hey, has anyone seen my cousin? He was supposed to deliver me shoes. No, we have not seen your cousin. I know I paused perfectly for this fat electrician. So I'm choosing the Chicago way, okay? There's a right way, the wrong way, and the Chicago way. My option would have been take the Belgian guy and beat him. You know, just keep on beating him. No, I'm here to deliver shoes. Oh, yeah, right. Beat him. Kick him. That's just me. Am I wrong? I'll let you decide.
And right as Bauk is putting that together, the 55 anti-tank guys are loading up in their Jeeps and they are peeling off, just straight up leaving. Bauk is obviously kind of pissed off that he didn't give them a heads up. I mean, they ran a phone line out to him, so they had a direct line of communication, but the artillery barrage must have taken it out. In fact, the artillery barrage has taken out all their phone lines, so now all they have is radio. So Bauk radios over to this anti-tank unit and they're like, yeah, we got orders to go over to this next town. That's where we're headed. At which point Bauk is like, okay, well, I can't do anything without you guys. Like, I have a 50 caliber machine gun and some small arms. If they roll up with a tank, we're done. We can't do anything. So Bauk gets on the radio with HQ, tells them the same thing. Hey, the 55 anti-tank guys left. We have nothing that can combat a tank. Do you want us to retreat back to a different position too? What do you want us to do?
No.
And Bauk is ordered to hold his position at all costs. Right around this time, the 4 forward observers that were down in town come up the hill. They're going to be joining forces with the INR platoon because their position got absolutely pounded by artillery. So it is now Lieutenant Bauk, the INR platoon, and 4 forward observers for a total of 22 men defending Lanzerath and the road running through it. So the forward observers get settled into their new fighting positions, and as soon as that happens, hundreds of German soldiers descend upon Lanzerath. I mean, a shit ton. Luckily, it's very clear that these guys are not moving tactically. They're kind of just moseying through the town. They're not expecting any resistance. They think that the Americans have either been taken out by that artillery barrage or that they all retreated after the fact. But as they start getting closer and closer to the ridge where the INR platoon is, Bauk finally makes out these aren't just German soldiers. These are German paratroopers carrying the new FG-42 assault rifle.
Nice.
Great. So not only are they outnumbered like 50 to 1.
Great. So in other words, it's the spirit of Germania descending upon the free world. It's time to give them a lesson in freedom.
But these are also an elite infantry unit that have fancy new weapons. Perfect. In reality, and luckily for Bauk, a lot of these paratroopers were new recruits and weren't quite trained up to the paratrooper standard that the Germans had previously had earlier in the war, but Bauk doesn't know that, and he's still kind of shitting his pants about it. And honestly, it really doesn't matter that much because even with that being said, it's still 500 to 22. So seeing how vastly outnumbered they are, Lieutenant Bauk is like, okay, it's my turn to call in artillery fire. He hops on the radio, he calls for fire right on top of this massive formation of Germans, and they radio back and tell him, sorry, you're outside of the priority zone. We're taking attack from all over the place, and you're just not a big priority right now, so you're just going to have to live without it. Now, Bauk
I guess stupid is as stupid does.
Bauk doesn't say it over the radio, obviously, but at this point, he's just kind of like, so let me get this straight. I need to hold this ground at all costs because it's of vital importance, but it's also not vitally important enough for you to throw some artillery fire my way to help me out in my 22 to 500 battle. Okay, great, perfect. You know what? I still have the element of surprise, so I've got that going for me at the very least. And as soon as he has that thought, he sets the radio down, and one of his INR platoon guys goes, sir, you might want to look at this. He turns, looks down at Lanzerath, and there's a German officer talking to a young blonde girl, and the young blonde girl is...
No! I knew it! She was evil! I paused before then, but I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. I knew it! It was a trick.
Pointing directly at them, at which point Bauk is like, fuck. And then...
I knew it. I knew it. Blondes are no fun.
Immediately, all the Germans scatter and take cover. So now he has nothing, and it's just straight up 22 to 500.
What are you thinking? I think we're about fixing to get into a pretty good gunfight.
All right, there you go. No retreat. Hold the line.
Moments later, the Germans just bum rush the hill that the INR platoon are on top of. About midway up this hill, there's this barbed wire fence. They didn't put it up. It'd been there forever. But none of the Germans even make it there. The INR platoon is just picking them off one by one. Remember, every single one of them is an expert marksman. And these guys are just out in the open, running up a hill. They don't stand a chance. The INR platoon ends up driving...
Well, you know what? Hold on. I'm just realizing something. It was a girl that ratted them out, but Adolf did not. So I guess this was a good Adolf. Oh, put down your tomatoes. That was a funny joke. It was a funny joke.
The Germans back, obviously. They fall back. They regroup. Bauk is going from foxhole to foxhole, redistributing ammunition, checking on all of his guys. Everybody's okay. They've repelled the first wave of the Germans. They're probably going to get flanked now. There's nobody out there. If they get flanked, they're screwed. At this point, it feels like they've been awake for 3 days, but in reality, it's only like 9 o'clock in the morning. And like I said, they're just sitting there waiting for this flank to come. They're just going to fight till the bitter end. That's all they can really do. And they sit there and they wait, and minutes turn into hours. And then the Germans launch another attack at 11 a.m., but they're not flanking them. They're using the same strategy. They're just running up the hill, trying to run through machine gun fire like it's World War I. At this point,
Okay, hey, A for effort. F for stupidity.
Bauk is like, well, this is fantastic news. Finally, somebody's given me and the INR platoon a break, and it turns out it's the enemy. So they mow him down again, push him back again. Shortly after that, a couple of Germans approach under a white flag. Bauk goes up there to meet them. The Germans just want to be able to scoop up some of their dead and wounded off the side of this ridge.
Don't trust them. Don't trust them. It's a trick. It's a trick.
And Bauk is like, sure, go ahead. You do that.
Don't. Be like, yeah? How about no?
We won't fire on you. Go ahead, get your guys. Bauk retreats, hoping that when he's captured, they're going to extend him the same goodwill. So
no, they will not.
The medics come out. They scoop up all the medics under the hill. The INR platoon lets them do it, just as Bauk said they would. Everything's fine and dandy, and Bauk is kind of thinking to himself, like, all right, I have the high ground. I have fortified machine gun positions. They've figured it out after the first 2 runs. They're definitely not going to try a full frontal assault where I have the high ground again.
Don't try it! High ground!
But the German stormtroopers, the paratroopers are like...
You underestimate my power!
At 1 p.m., they launch a full frontal assault for a 3rd time.
Tic-tac-toe, 3 in a row.
And predictably so, they got the exact same results they got the first 2 times. The INR platoon guys described it as shooting clay pigeons at the state fair.
Whoops, I'm gonna grab that there. High ground. Wait, are you robbing me?
Then the same thing happened.
You know, sometimes when I look at Anakin's fall to the dark side, you know, when I was younger, I viewed it as tragic. Now the older I get, it's just downright stupid. I mean, it's kind of really stupid, you know? And yes, I'm a Warhammer 40K fan. Even Horus's fall to chaos, like that boy got tricked. Okay, he was swindled and tricked. I mean, Magnus's fall to chaos was more tragic. Okay, Perturabo digs holes. Mortarian's just a smelly piece of crap. Always has been, always will be. Angron was tragic. Conrad Kurz, there was no help in Conrad. Alpharius and Omegon, whoever's that, whatever, you know. Fulgrim, as soon as he touched that sword, boom, done, forever lost. Who else am I missing? Fulgrim, Horus. Perturabo, Fulgrim, Magnus, Mortarion, Angron, Clarius Omegon. Who am I missing? Oh, there's 3 more I'm missing. I know I'm missing them. Okay, guess I got a brain fart. Guess I'm getting stupid. Oh, well.
Happens. The Germans fall back. They regroup. 3 p.m. They launch another full frontal attack. They get repelled again, except during this attack, they sent out so many men that the 50 caliber machine gun actually got burnt up because they were having to run it so hard to mow down so many Germans. In addition to that, they're also out of ammunition for the BARs, and Bauk's radio got shot in the middle of this firefight, so now they have no communication whatsoever. So now Bauk's making all the decisions. They've held this position longer than anybody could have ever expected them to. It's time to get the fuck out of here. So he goes, they sabotage all the Jeeps, and as soon as it gets dark out, they're gonna slip away into the forest at night and make their way back to headquarters on foot. Now, that sounds a little bit crazy.
It's a crazy plan. Let's see if it works out for them, Tom.
Like, why wouldn't you want to drive? But in reality, there's probably Germans all over the road, and this is the INR platoon. That's their whole MO, is sneaking around in the woods and going unnoticed. This is their best shot at getting out of this. So they sabotage the Jeeps, they get ready to step off, and right at dusk as they're about to leave, the Germans attack them from their flank. They get into a firefight, but the INR platoon runs completely out of ammunition, and they get overrun by the Germans. And eventually, the Germans just roll up to the foxholes, and they yell down, "You can come out or we're going to send a grenade in." So foxhole by foxhole, the entire INR platoon surrenders. And as they come out, they're all shot up, blown up. They're all hit with shrapnel, gunshot wounds. Bauk took a bullet to the leg. Nobody's doing that great. But with the exception of one forward observer by the name of Billy Queen, they're all still alive, which is pretty incredible for a 22 to 500 firefight. So the Germans get the entire INR platoon and the 3 remaining FOs all lined up, and it becomes very apparent that the Germans are gonna kill them. They're standing there with a machine gun, and
I knew it. It's to be expected.
right as this guy is about to let fire with this machine gun, a German officer comes running up the hill screaming, and next thing they know, the entire INR platoon is getting escorted down this hill into Lanzerath. Next thing they know, they're all getting funneled into the cafe in Lanzerath. The Germans are digging through their pockets, they're confiscating anything that's good, and the Germans confiscate all the cigarettes, and as they take all the cigarettes, they walk around and give the Americans one last cigarette, like, okay, maybe they are still gonna kill us. I have no
Yeah, probably. It's to be expected.
idea what's going on. Either way, now they're all just sitting in the cafe having their last cigarette, blown up, bleeding with bullet holes in them, and it's just dead quiet. Bauk said the loudest thing in that room was the second hand on the cuckoo clock in the corner, and it was ungodly loud. It was so quiet that in between the noises of the second hand on that cuckoo clock, Bauk could actually hear the Germans, the superior master race, across town in their aid station screaming from their injuries. Meanwhile, him and all of his men are just sitting in the cafe, dead quiet, stone face, having a cigarette. It's like the biggest cool guy moment ever.
Yeah, that's right. We did it. Hear those Germanic screams? That was us, boys.
So the INR platoon finishes their last cigarette, and then they just sit there, and they sit there, and they sit there, and they sit there, and then eventually Bauk is just trying to think to himself over that annoying-ass cuckoo clock in the corner, and he just
Okay, that cool clock is kind of making me go a little cuckoo too, man. I'm coming on edge here.
starts to get really down. He's not happy with how things went, right? He spent 6 years of his life training for this, and he goes into combat, and the first time he really goes into combat, he gets the best guys that the 99th Infantry had to offer. They let him pick the best of the best, and he took them into battle, and in one day, he got all of them captured and most likely killed, and it's all on him. Or at least that's how he felt at the time. And he just continues to sit there for hours, just loathing himself in the silence and the noise of that fucking cuckoo clock in the corner that just keeps ticking and ticking and
Make it stop!
and ticking, and he's just sitting there, and he's sitting there, and then the fucking bird comes out again and honks, and it's 10 p.m., and suddenly he has this memory of when he was 14 years old, and his Aunt Mildred, who used to read palms, she read his palm when he was 14, and she told him that if he lived to be 21, he'd have a long, happy life, and he's about 2 hours away from turning 21. At this point, he can't believe that this is the dumb shit that he's thinking about, but that's what he's thinking about. So he sits there and he waits, and more time passes, and sure enough, midnight hits, and suddenly he just feels this relief, like, can't get me now. I'm gonna make it. And not a minute later, some high-ranking German officer comes storming into the cafe, yelling at all the other Germans. This guy's not like all the other German military guys around here. He's not standard German military. This guy's SS. He's
He's one of those. SS.
dressed from head to toe in leather. He's got the German dead skull on his hat. He's got the Knight's
Dead giveaway for a bad guy.
Iron Cross around his neck, the second highest award for valor in the German military. This dude is super important, and he is super fucking pissed off right now. Now, Bauk doesn't know it at the time, but this SS officer is yelling at all these other German officers like, why are you guys stopped? Why aren't you continuing to advance? We're on a very strict timetable. What the fuck is going on? So these German officers explain to this SS guy like, hey, there's a massive American army in this wood line. They've got tanks, they've got machine guns. We're not going to go fight them at night. They've been fucking us up all day long. We finally...
Oh! They think there's more of them! That's right, there is.
Captured their forward scout element. So they wait until there's enough light to actually go outside. Like 4 a.m., the Germans send out a bunch of scouts into the wood line. They don't find anything because there's nothing there to find, and they have to come to the realization that 22 dudes with small arms have been fucking them up for the past 22 hours, and they're all incredibly embarrassed. So the Germans take off, hightailing it down this road, half tracks, tanks, and then Lyle Bauk and the rest of the INR platoon are all getting sent to POW camps. Unfortunately, because Bauk is an officer, he's going to get separated from the rest of the guys, and they're going to separate POW camps. From here, you guys know the drill. POW camp is absolutely horrible, the worst possible thing to have to live through. He's starved to death. There's diseases, living in close proximity with other sick people. And as the war progresses, at one point, there is actually a prison break. He ends up getting recaptured, stuck back into a POW camp. And as the war continues to progress, for some reason, they keep moving him from POW camp to POW camp. And he doesn't know it at the time, but what's actually happening is the Germans are losing the war, and all the German POW camps on the eastern half of Europe are starting to move all their POWs and themselves to the western side, because if these Germans are going to have to surrender to an allied force, they absolutely want to surrender to the Americans, the British, and the Canadians.
Because you don't want to deal with Stalin and the Red Army. That red wave is coming. Soviet Union. They have a few choice words for Germania. If you ever want to see, I forget the name of the film, but there's this old, it was made in 1950s. I mean, it's nothing but a propaganda film, and it's all laughable, but it's pure gold. I mean, if there's anybody that has the money to do so, they could redub it, and it would be the world's most perfect meme dubbed movie. It just would work. It would just be perfect. It would be perfect. To quote Homelander, perfect.
Because if they surrender to them, it's a court date, and if they surrender to the Red Army, it's going to be an execution. His final POW camp is in Moosburg, and while he's there, a bunch of SS teenagers, like radicalized 16, 17, 18-year-olds with submachine guns that have German officer rank, roll into this POW camp, and they want to execute all the POWs, including Bauk, at which point the normal German army, the Wehrmacht, are like, no, you're not executing all the prisoners.
You guys do that, and we're screwed. Do you understand? The red wave's coming our way. We surrender to the Allies, we'll be A-okay. Hey, I think that rhymed.
Those are our bargaining chips to turn over to the Allies so we don't get killed. So absolutely not. And there's this huge fight between the SS and the Wehrmacht, which became more and more common as the war progressed. And ultimately, the Wehrmacht won that argument, and they ended up keeping everybody alive. So Bauk got pretty lucky on that one. From there, Lyle Bauk remains at that POW camp till the end of World War II. When he is finally released, he weighs 114 pounds and has contracted hepatitis. He is essentially on his deathbed, and he spends months in the hospital. Thankfully, Lyle Bauk does end up recovering. He makes it back home, and from there, he's like, what, 22 at this point? So he's trying to figure out what he wants to do with the rest of his life, and he's like, I mean, I've already dedicated so much of my time to being in the military, maybe I should just go back and be full-time Army, and he's considering doing that, and then the paperwork comes through, and the Army fucked him over on his back pay and his leave that he had accrued while he was a POW, and he, challenged him on it, and he's like, hey, you did my back pay wrong. You paid me out as a supply NCO when I was actually an officer in the infantry in combat the entire time and serving as a POW. I'd like to be paid as an officer, not as an NCO. And the Army's like, don't care, fuck off.
I knew it. Administration.
So he's like furious, like the Army has done nothing but treat this guy poorly, right? Like couldn't get artillery fire when he needed it, can't get back pay, and he's just like, screw this, I'm done with the Army. I don't want anything to do with it anymore. Understandably so from his point of view. From there, he kind of hangs around town, meets his high school sweetheart Lucy, ends up marrying her, trying to decide what he wants to do for a career. And one of the things that helped him recover from all his injuries from the war was actually a chiropractor. So that inspires him to go off and become a chiropractor himself. And from there, he just kind of gets to live happily ever after, just like his Aunt Mildred predicted when she read his palm. For 20 years, he never
Shout out to Aunt Mildred.
talked about what he did during World War II. Why would he? He thought he was a failure. He thought that he got given the chance to assemble the best men the 99th Infantry Division had to offer, and he led them into battle and got them captured and served out the majority of his time in theater as a prisoner of war. It was nothing to brag about, or at least that's how he felt. So he never really talked about it. And then one day in 1965, he got a letter from one of his men. After 20 years, the United States government was finally putting out extensive volumes of what happened during World War II, and one of the volumes was dedicated to this major German offensive in 1944, December 16th, 1944 specifically, called the Battle of the Bulge. Adolf Hitler had ordered a massive blitzkrieg-style offensive where they were going to split the American and British forces in half by seizing Antwerp, cutting off the supplies, crushing the British and the Canadians, and forcing the Americans to sign a peace treaty. In order for this plan to have any success, it was critical that they had the element of surprise, and because of that, German High Command in the days leading up to the Battle of the Bulge offensive ordered that none of the German scouts were to go out without a German scout dog that was specifically trained to lead the scouts by 100 yards. That way, none of them got caught, because if a single scout got caught and got interrogated and gave away this battle strategy, it would ruin the entire thing. That's the dog that they shot on December 13th. And
I don't encourage violence against animals, but all right, they got the dog. Yeah, happy Kawikadink?
that also explains all the ski marks and everything else hundreds of yards behind the dog. The artillery barrage that they survived before the paratroopers attacked, that was the largest artillery barrage of World War II, with over 1,600 artillery pieces firing on the American front for over 90 minutes. That pissed off SS officer that showed up at the cafe at midnight, that was Joachim Peiper, the commander of the 1st Panzer Division. The 1st Panzer Division was the lead element of the 6th Panzer Army, which at this point in time was Germany's premier armored unit that was hand-selected by Hitler himself to have the most important role of the entire military operation. The 6th Panzer Army, being comprised of almost 5,000 men and 600 vehicles, tanks, and armored half-tracks, was supposed to be the first element to cross the River Meuse and head straight to Antwerp to cut the Allied forces in half. They were the spearhead of this entire offensive, and Joachim Peiper's 1st Panzer Division was the tip of that spear, and the reason he was so pissed off that night was because the paratroopers getting stopped by the INR platoon created a traffic jam behind them that he was stuck in, and he was 18 hours behind schedule. This German attack was so...
Yeah! 18 hours behind. Hey, that's what we call another day in Chicago on the Dan Ryan or Lakeshore Drive.
Hasty, they weren't going to be able to rely on their own supply lines. They had to rely on capturing Allied supplies to be able to continue this attack, including fuel. And since they were 18 hours behind schedule, the Allies were able to adopt new defensive positions, not leave any supplies behind, and the entire 1st Panzer Division would run out of fuel. The weather would break, Allied planes would take the sky, they would attack, and the entire 1st Panzer Division would never cross the River Meuse. The INR platoon and 4 forward observers quite literally blunted the spear of the entire German offensive. 22 men stood in the pocket and stuffed the largest blitz the world has ever seen at the line of scrimmage. These 22 men may be responsible for changing the entire outcome of World War II, and at this point in time, nobody really knew anything about it. Some of the military historians knew that something happened over there, but nobody knew what happened, and it's because Buch and all of his men got captured after the war. There were no after-action reports. They never got around to filling out all those papers. They just got sent to the hospital, got patched up, and got sent home. Nobody knew what actually happened. So Buch, 20 years after the fact, writes into his old commanding officer, and then a couple of months later, he never hears anything back but a silver...
Wait. I don't want a damn thing for myself. Well, he gets my salute. But he should get something.
Years after the fact, writes into his old commanding officer, and then a couple of months later, he never hears anything back, but a silver star just shows up in the mail, only for him, and it's not really...
I didn't ask for this, jackass!
what he's looking for, because he figures the rest of his men probably feel the same way he did. They trained just as hard as he did. They went out, they got the same fight, and they ended up getting caught too. They probably feel just like he does, and he wants to make sure that he gets them the recognition. He wants to be the good leader to his men that he never had. For years, he writes letters and petitions and does interviews and talks to journalists about what his men did that day. And for years, nothing really happens. And years turned into decades. And after 2 more decades, he finally breaks through. And in 1981, his men get the recognition they deserve. The Iron Heart platoon would retroactively be awarded 4 Distinguished Service Crosses, 5 Silver Stars, and 10 Bronze Stars with V device, and the entire platoon will be awarded the Presidential Unit Citation. If you don't know, a Presidential Unit Citation is the highest award a unit can receive, and it's usually given out to companies or battalions for major battles or something huge. It's very strange for an element as small as a platoon to be given this award. In fact, they were the only platoon of World War II to be given the Presidential Unit Citation.
The Emperor protects.
And with that, they became the most decorated platoon of World War II. Thank you for watching. The best way to...
Hey, how come there's no movie? How come there's no Netflix special? Come on. Put me in the game, coach. I want to do that. Yes. Come on. There should be a goddamn movie or a TV series. Come on.
For the channels, go buy some merch over at thefatelectrician.com. Quack bang out. It's pretty wild those guys changed the entire course of world history and didn't even know it till 20 years after the fact. I don't know. Maybe there's a message or something in that.
There is. Even the lightest touch can alter the fate of time, or the weaves of time. All right, I screwed that up. All right, well, we learned something here today. First of all, that was a 10 out of 10 epic story. 22 versus 500. They lived to tell the tale. They changed the course of history. One small moment blunted the entire spear of over 5,000, 6,000 of the elite guard, the elite tanks of Adolf Hitler's plan. I mean, it's a story that should be made legend, that everyone should know about. Like, hey, this is the point right here. If it weren't for these 22 fantastic gentlemen, if it wasn't for them, the whole world would be different. Things would be different. The course of the war would be different. Everyone should remember these men and what they stood for. But also, it's an example of heroism. Our education system is an absolute piece of crap. I mean, there's stuff that we're just finding out now. I'm finding out now, and I wish that all these untold stories were shared more amongst the greater populace. And I know there's the internet, and anybody can look up whatever they want. But I mean, this is one of those key moments where people need to hear about how 22 stood against 500, which by proxy halted the tip of the spear of Adolf Hitler's master plan to turn the tide of the war. I mean, shout out to the Fat Electrician. Hey, man, shout out to the dedication and work that you're doing for all these videos. Support him. Follow him on all of his social media. Of course, use Delete Me. We're not sponsored, but I've used them, and I feel a lot safer on the interwebs now, as much as I can be. Drink water. Keep your heads on a swivel. And if you made it this far, you could say that Lyle and his fantastic gentlemen, they literally swept up the German Third Reich. Hey, Lyle and your fantastic boys, are you sweeping? I think they were sweeping. They were sweeping pretty good. Great story. Take good care of yourselves. And by the way, it's December. A Merry Christmas to all of you lovely, hip, cool cats.